Hello and welcome to the Big East. I'm your host, Netka. I'm delighted to have here with me today Malcolm Conlan, who is a British blogger and supporter of the Philippines and the Filipino community. Malcolm, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute honour to be here and for you to have invited me to your show. And I believe it's the first episode as well. So this is really exciting for me.
No, I was very much looking forward to getting you on the sofa. Malcolm, you are a self-confessed Pinoy at heart. I mean,
yes.
you've had this love affair with the Philippines for decades now. Tell me how this all began.
I'm a massive supporter of the Philippines now, but this has started with my love of Miss Saigon, the musical. I first went to watch the show when I was 18 in Drury Lane with many of the original cast, Lea Salonga, Jonathan Pryce, and I fell in love with the story. And of course, although Miss Saigon is not about the Philippines, in fact it's about the Vietnam War. The fact is a lot of the cast in those days were Filipino. In fact, probably at least 200 Filipinos around the world have actually had families and settled in foreign lands, including here, as a result of that show. And I fell in love with the love story, and I wanted to come to the country where the cast were from. So I flew to the Philippines when I was 19, obviously my first trip abroad, 7,000 miles, and I can only say the Filipino people were incredibly friendly and welcoming. I felt safe. You know, I had an affinity ever since with the country, and all of that has started because of my love of Miss Saigon, which is kind of funny.
but that's like all things in life. When we become passionate about something, it's usually accidental.
Yes.
We come across something or somebody that you know, arouses something interesting within, something passionate within us and powerful. What's interesting about your view of the Philippines and your activism, if you like, is that you are, it comes from a genuine place. It comes from a place of respect for the land, respect for the people, for the culture, which contrasts to the neo-colonial outlook support, if you like. And I've noticed that. Let's talk a little bit about this distinction, because you probably know better than most people what I mean by sort of neo-colonial outlook.
Completely. If I may speak a little bit about my family, I'm of the firm belief that I fall in love with the Philippines, and I'm incredibly blessed to be married to a Filipino, to have family in the Philippines. And for people who say to me I have no connection with the country or don't understand the country, I do, because I have family living there. I have children going to school in the Philippines. Our family have needed to access healthcare in the Philippines. I even have good friends and cousins and relatives in Tondo, which is quite a difficult area in the Philippines where there's a lot of poverty. So I do believe that I have an affinity, and people forget that I've been going to the Philippines for close to 30 years, 3 decades. So I remember the Philippines before. I remember there were like scammers, and there was, I feel like there was an issue with drugs going back 30 years ago, and there were kids begging on the street late at night, early in the morning. There were people in absolute poverty. So I've seen the Philippines. I'm not just some foreigner meddling in the Philippines. So to me, I believe my heart and soul has an affinity with the country and the people. And I'm also of the firm belief that if you marry somebody from a different country, you should appreciate that culture. You know, it's very easy to kind of say that, you know, I'm just some foreigner who's married a Filipino bride. I hate this expression. But
so you don't go there to educate these foreigners or to whatever.
No.
You go there because you have a natural love and affinity with the place. You're a Filipino in all but birth in many ways.
Well, I've been to the Philippines.
So you're not there part of an NGO to educate or to feed or to patronize the locals.
No.
That's what, there is a lot of that in the Philippines.
Exactly. But I've been to the Philippines more than 50 times, I believe 54, 55 times. And to me, the Philippines is in my heart and soul. So, for example, when some of us stress, some of us are stressed, Some of us would smoke or they would drink. But to me, if I'm incredibly stressed or depressed, my stress reliever is to land in the Philippines, to be in the country that I can't begin to describe to you. I'm getting emotional. I can't begin to describe to you how much I love the Philippines and the Filipino people.
Malcolm, President Duterte, you are a big fan of his. In fact, I believe you've met him. Tell me about this meeting and also who arranged it.
It was an incredible opportunity. You know, I'm very grateful, and I never forget that. I'm one of the only foreigners, if you like, who's not connected to politics or who's had that remarkable opportunity. And it all came about by chance. I went back home. I call the Philippines my home because I believe the Philippines is...
Is the Philippines the first home or the second home?
I'll answer that question later.
All right.
I'll have to think about that one.
Okay, interesting.
No, but seriously, I had this remarkable opportunity. I posted a Facebook status at the beginning of last December saying that I was going home to the Philippines, and I'm very grateful. It was Mocaruson, who was Assistant Secretary of the Presidential Communications Office at the time, and her team saw my status update. And they said, are you going to be around in the Philippines in December? Then when I got to the country, they gave me a date and they said, look, are you available on this date? And I kind of thought, this is very interesting. I wonder if I'm going to watch watch a concert or something like that. And you know, when I was informed that I would be able to meet the president, it was, I've got to say, one of the most remarkable opportunities of my life. You know, there I was on the day in question. I arrived at I was invited to the palace, and for a while before I knew the arrangements, but of course I couldn't say a word because of security. I couldn't tell anybody where I was going because I didn't want people to cause any problems or put me off in any way. And I arrived at the palace at the golf course, or the golf house, the golf club, which is in the palace. And you know, I had to go through security and show my passport and be asked questions, and it was quite a process. And I know that Philippine traffic, Manila's traffic, can be quite bad. So I purposely arrived there about 3 hours before. And this was a venue that housed more than 120 people. There was some lovely food there, so I had some food and drinks, and I sat there and I saw the presidential chairs that we got to sit on. And I was literally the first person there. And I waited there probably for about 2 hours until people started arriving. And you know, as the room was filling up, it was nice because I was able to meet fellow bloggers and supporters of the president as well. And I have to say, it was the most exciting, incredible moment of my life, and I'm very grateful.
Tell me about Duterte himself. I mean, what did you talk about, and how long was the meeting?
Yeah.
What kind of impression did he make on you?
Well, the funny thing is, you've got to think about it. I'm in a room of 120 Filipinos, and I'm the only foreigner there. And when the president, before he arrived, he landed in the palace in his helicopter. So you heard the helicopter in the background, and it was all very exciting. And you know, he has such presence. When he walked into the room, I felt a sense of elation and a sense of overwhelming appreciation for what he's done for the Philippines. And of course, when he saw me, I was able to shake his hand about 5 times during the evening, which was incredible. But when he saw me, he said to me, "Thank you very much for supporting me. And before I forget, I want to wish you and your family a Merry Christmas." So clearly he was already aware of what I was doing. And you know, to connect with him, he wasn't, the press have pointed him out as some, I don't know, some tyrant or some dictator or something like that. But nothing can be further from the truth.
Yes.
He's a humble, caring man.
And a spiritual man.
And a spiritual man, yeah. And people would say that he's questioning God and everything else, but you have to understand it.
But in a specific context,
yeah,
in the
completely.
context of the corrupt Catholic Church in the Philippines. And so that's very different. And people forget when they come up with criticisms, they forget context. And context is everything in life, generally, I believe. Now, with regards to President Duterte and his war on drugs, now you've obviously, as you said, you've been going to the Philippines for many years. What is the main difference that you've noticed since you first went there and up until now, really? Have you noticed a marked decrease in criminal gangs and criminal activity and so on, and perhaps an increase in quality of life?
Completely.
Yes.
I've been, as I said to you in the past, I've been to areas of the Philippines. I've been involved with some charities in the past, and I've seen areas that weren't so pleasant. Don't get me wrong, I love the country very, very much, but of course with every country it has its problems. And before President Duterte came to office, there was an estimated 4 million Filipinos addicted to drugs. Mm-hmm. And the drug that they're addicted to is shabu, or crystal meth. And crystal meth is a nasty drug that totally changes the mindset. I watched a program in the UK, it was a documentary, and there was a Scottish lady who apparently was on crystal meth. You know, it's one of these police programs where they lock somebody in a cell, and she had to be held down by 5 police officers. And this is how crystal meth would change somebody who's a regular citizen, if you
yes.
like, into a maniac, and somebody who's crazed. And this is the issue. It hasn't been tackled before by any other president. Or of course,
and it's rarely reported. I mean, the real atrocities that people on meth commit in the Philippines, they're not really reported, which gives the wrong impression to the wider world, because people think it's just another drug and recreational drug, like the others. But it's not really. I mean, this is a serious psychotropic drug that turns, as you say, ordinary people into rapists and murderers of infants and the elderly and the handicapped and so on and so forth. So it's really important to know the distinction between shabu and other recreational drugs.
For example, heroin or cannabis
cocaine,
or something
whatever.
like that. Cannabis, I guess, could turn you psychotic over a long period
Yes.
of time. But of
not
course,
into a mass
but not
murderer.
into a mass murderer.
Yes, absolutely.
And the point is that people will criticize the war on drugs, and we can go into that. But the point is, there's now a decrease of crime by almost 50% in so many different areas of Manila. You know, the police report crime is halved. So in fact, the people are safer. But there are so many initiatives that I could talk about. But one thing I wanted to mention was that President Duterte introduced a curfew, and in Davao before, but nationally now, so children couldn't go out from 10 o'clock at night until 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And this was because what was happening before, parents were encouraging their children to beg. So you had children out in the middle of the night being involved with gangs, begging for money, and this is the point. President Duterte believes, quite rightly, that the children are our future and that education is so important. So everything that the president has done is for the benefit of the Filipino people, and it now means children can concentrate on their education rather than their parents getting them involved in selling drugs to feed their habit. And you can see President Duterte is a father and just wants the best for all Filipinos, regardless of what political party they happen to be from. He wants Filipinos to be educated and to have the skills in life necessary to get a job. And part of this comes from the unfortunate reliance on drugs, as I said previously,
Yes.
of up to 4 million people.
It is absolutely awful. And the incredible thing about Duterte is that he genuinely loves the Philippines. I mean, he loves the Filipino people and he wants the best for them. And that's quite rare in today's leaderships. Very few genuinely love their countries, and they don't care about riches. He doesn't even like to be called the president. He prefers to be called mayor.
Yeah.
So, and I really, really admire that about him. And it's no surprise that the vast majority of the Filipinos support him. They don't want him to go. They don't want him. They rely on him. He's the father of them all. Which brings me to the opposition. You'd think there was a huge opposition to Duterte because of these rich media outlets that of the liberals, of the yellows. They obviously, I mean, they are intent on destroying Duterte and all he stands for, which really doesn't help matters at all, because obviously they're being incredibly obstructionist. Yet he is standing firm to those. people. Rappler, which is now in trouble. I mean, they've had so many scandals. Now the CEO of Rappler, Maria Ressa, has been arrested and released on bail for corruption, for tax evasion and libel, and also for receiving funding from foreigners, which is actually illegal in Philippine law. Have you ever had any trouble with these people? I mean, I know you've been watching them for some time now, but have you been threatened by them?
I haven't been threatened, but the fact is there's a very big opposition in the Philippines to real change. You have to remember that President Duterte has a public, if you like, how am I going to put this? The social weather station has given a popularity rating of over 70%, and that's not comparable. Any other Western leader or any other politician with a rating of even 70 to even 80% is quite clearly remarkable. And that's because he's making real change and he's improving the lives for ordinary Filipinos. But the problem is there's a lot of biased media and there's a lot of opposition to what he's doing. Because of course in the past people have been funded by drug money, people have been funded by corruption. You know, it's good to be corrupt because you can earn lots of money. But
Yes,
President
absolutely.
Duterte won't stand corruption. And in the case of Rappler, you know, I believe in people's right to freedom of speech. And of course, if Rappler wanted to exist in the Philippines, you know, nobody can stop them. But the
And
point
he hasn't
is,
even tried to
no, he
silence
hasn't tried
them.
to. And this is the point. Under the Philippine Constitution, the fact is they've relied on foreign funding. So basically, Pierre Renardo, who worked for Rappler, was in the Malacanang Press Corps, and basically she was forbidden from being part of that. And it wasn't because she was raising an objectionable questions, which she was regularly. It was because of her, because of the Rappler organisation, and the fact is they have foreign backers. Now, there's a lot of local Philippine journalists who are telling the real truth, but just because this organisation is I don't know what their purpose is or what their aim is, other than to undermine the president and to
Yes.
spread mistruths about the president. And you know, but that's got nothing whatsoever to do with the arrest of Maria Ressa. The reason why she was arrested was because of tax evasion and because of a private prosecution case or a private case of a businessman in the
Yes,
Philippines
for
and
lying,
her
basically.
libel statements.
For lying.
And the problem is she's hitched on that. You take her arrest. Her arrest could have been done at a certain time during the day, but it was the fact is she didn't process her papers properly. So as a result of that, it happened in the evening. And I all believe this was to play to media coverage. She wanted that media coverage, the same as Laila de Lima. She wanted it to look like she was against the government or something like that. But this wasn't the case. You know, if you do something wrong in the Philippines, you suffer the consequences. And that's the case with these two. And it has nothing at all to do with their politics. People call President Duterte a tyrant or a dictator. So why then does he address his critics? Why then does he ask the Philippine National Police to give maximum tolerance? This clearly shows that President Duterte stands up to his detractors. You know, he just wants to carry on with business. He just wants to improve the lives of the Philippines and the Filipino people. And the problem is so many people would bash him because they get a lot out of it.
They do,
There's a lot of
yes.
media mileage. They can sell newspapers. As I've said before.
And of course, Rappler have a lot of money. They have,
Yeah.
When you have a huge marketing budget, then of course you're going to be heard louder.
Completely right. And you know, Rappler have only got me once, where there was a situation where I filmed, it was somebody from the Presidential Communications Office came over here and I filmed that, and then Rappler then kind of quoted me and kind of used my quote. You know,
Right.
Rappler are quite sneaky because they try to
Very.
find ways to try and undermine you, and that's the issue, and that's
Yes,
why
but
it's
not
so
clever
dangerous.
enough, because they've been in trouble for libel before. So they, instead of tidying up the truth, they downright lie.
Yeah.
So of course they're in trouble, and it was bound to happen eventually. They were bound, and I do think they will go down.
Completely. And the other one, of course, is the Pinoy Co blog, and this is the website, and everyone's entitled to freedom of speech. But the issue with the Pinoy Co blog is they kind of put memes, if you like, of the president looking green, or when Aset Moka was doing so many fantastic things for the country. You know, Aset Moka's brilliant because she goes to Filipino OFWs around the world, and she spreads the good message of the president. She encourages people to use social media. She promotes the country. She helps with issues where there are Filipinos who maybe have been mistreated. And this is such a good work. But the problem with this Pinoy Ko blog is they were painting pictures of her like as a devil and wearing green and all this kind of thing. And this is not very good. You know, I don't understand what it is. Do they want cheap hits? But you've got to see that this is how it becomes very clever. Pinoy Ko blog, they use advertising. And a lot of these websites against the president use advertising. So they want you to hit on their website. And in the meantime, they're making money out of it.
Yes.
And I've made it very clear that I won't make any money out of politics. I've never been paid a single, people call me a paid troll, but I've never been paid a single peso or a single centavo, single dollar or pound for supporting the president. I support him because I believe that he genuinely has the interests of the Filipino people at heart. My own family are in the Philippines, so this also affects me.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to mention something which I noticed. Since Duterte's war on drugs, there's been all these terrorists popping up in various Muslim majority areas in the Philippines, causing a great deal of trouble. And again, going back to corrupt media, wherever there's money, so you know, foreign money, there's terrorism, and wherever there is terrorism, there is drugs behind it. So as Duterte begins this war on drugs, suddenly there's all these terrorist attacks all around the Philippines. There is a connection there, isn't there?
Well, you only have to look at the situation with Merawi and Mindanao. So Mindanao, there's quite a large Muslim population within the island of Mindanao, and these are peace-loving people, caring people, and of course President Duterte is from Davao as well, and actually he's really, if you like, been a fantastic mayor for a long time now and made a lot of improvements in that area. But the thing is, the whole terrorism thing, you know, it's almost putting people off from visiting that region of the Philippines, and nothing can be further from the truth. Yeah, so you know, I think the thing to consider is that President Duterte cares very much about all Filipinos, whatever religion they're from, whatever background they're from. You only have to look at President Duterte's, if you like, leadership of Davao and the fantastic improvements in the country. They're a first-class city now. You know, they have a fantastic infrastructure. They're very, very safe. I had the privilege of visiting there last year, and you know, it's quite funny because in the Philippines, you know, you can't go everywhere you don't wear seatbelts. You go in a car, you don't wear seatbelts. And when I was in the airport, the taxi driver said, "Sorry, sir, we can't move until you've got your safety belt on. This is our mayor." So it's fantastic, you know. But the thing is, there are struggles going on in the region, and of course, President Duterte just wants peace. And I know they're doing a lot of efforts to make sure that happens. But the thing is, you make a very good point. Wherever there is biased media, there is terrorism as well, and of course drugs as well kind of plays right into that. And this is why President Duterte wants to almost eradicate drugs in the Philippines.
What's the most wonderful thing about the Philippines that you love the most? And also, what could be better aside from the drug situation, obviously?
The Philippines, to me, is an incredible destination in terms of tourism, and tourism is improving. Infrastructure is improving. So many people talk about debt from the Chinese and loans, but nothing can be further from the truth. The fact is, President Duterte has been left with no choice but to invest in the country. There is issue with traffic. There is issue with people getting across town from foreign investment, and that needs to be improved, if you like. And the only way to do that is to make changes in the country for the better. I think that's very, very important. But the fact is, the Philippines is getting there. Under President Duterte's leadership, infrastructure's being improved, foreign investments coming in, and the Philippines
really
is going in the right direction.
The foreign direct investment, because that's a major reason why the Philippines has been left behind. You know, when you look at countries like, when you look at China, Singapore, the reason they're huge is because of foreign direct investment. So I think that's a very wise move if they, you know, really go for that.
One of the major issues, of course, is this 60-40, this foreign ownership. Apparently, if you start up a business in the Philippines, you need to have a Filipino partner. And I think this is a restriction, and this was under the previous constitution. And I think that needs to be looked at. And I believe that many people now are voicing their opinion. You know, I think that the Philippines does need investment. You know, loans are important as well, because of course they need the money, but also they need more foreign companies to come in.
They do.
But I wouldn't want a foreign company to come in and start charging Filipinos loads of money. It's not about that. I think it's just about the Philippines opening its doors.
Depends on who it is.
Yeah, of course. But my worry is international bias media giving the Philippines a bad name, talking about the war on drugs, talking about shootings everywhere, is not helping the country to improve. And some Filipinos themselves who are negative and talking about the war on drugs and sharing information, I don't think is helping. As I said, I think Filipinos should be ambassadors for the country. Not everyone can agree on the same thing.
Well, they're obviously unpatriotic. It's very simple.
Well, the thing is, not everyone is in agreement on everything. I accept people's freedom of speech, but what I'm asking is that all Filipinos rally together to improve, to support the country, to support the Department of Tourism, to show that the Philippines is more fun, there's more fun in the Philippines. And this takes every single Filipino from around the world to become ambassadors for the country. Regardless of their political opinion, people need to work together, because what the Philippines needs is investment. And why people are talking about shootings and the war on drugs and President Duterte being a tyrant, all of which is completely false, it's not improving the country.
Yes. So the next step is foreign direct investment.
Completely right.
Yes. Now, let's quickly touch on the overseas Filipinos who've suffered tremendously and who sadly were forced to leave the Philippines when they felt they had very little choice. Do you see them coming back as the economy improves and the jobs are there?
I think, so there are 11 million overseas Filipinos around the world, and they're providing services, be it nursing, be it in the allied healthcare professionals, be it as engineers, be it as carers. And I do think that the world needs to appreciate the fact that without Filipinos, you know, I think there'll be a gaping hole. Be it the tourism industry in the Middle East, be it the caring profession. But the fact is, you know, some Filipinos haven't been home in 15 years or 20 years. And they
really
still feel a right, they still feel they have a right to comment on politics and to comment on what's happening. You know, the thing is, you know, people will start returning home, but the situation needs to be right. You know, I know the government is doing a lot in terms of encouraging Filipinos to go back home to the Philippines, but I think it's going to take at least 20 to 30 years before many Filipinos start going home again. For example, nurses are very, very low pay for nurses and for workers. And there's this talk as well about relying on Chinese workers in the Philippines.
So low pay overseas?
No, low pay in the Philippines.
In the Philippines.
So basically a private hospital will pay very little for its Filipino nurses. And this is why Filipinos feel they're forced to go abroad. So why the big companies in the Philippines are making lots of money, Filipinos themselves aren't. And this needs to change. And the only way, as you say, this is going to change is big foreign companies coming over to the Philippines and, you know, investing in the country and employing more Filipinos. And, you know, the Filipinos themselves need to have the skills that are necessary. You know, it was trendy to be a nurse. It was trendy to be an engineer. But maybe you need to be an architect. Maybe you need to be a groundsman. Maybe you need to be a diamond driller. And people need to start getting the skills. People complain about the Chinese coming in, but if Filipinos don't have that skills through no fault of their own, that's the way forward.
Yes.
And it's not having to think when you're at school, I want to be a nurse because I'll get out of the country. It's about finding the necessary skills to stay in the country and support the country. And you know, that's not a criticism. That's just how things have been because of the years of corruption previously. The only way that Filipinos can improve their life was going abroad. And I'd like that to change.
Yes.
You know, President Gloria previously said you'd like to see the day when going abroad was a choice and not a necessity. And I would agree with that. You know, I'd like to see Filipinos staying at home because I believe there is a skill drain. President Duterte mentioned this before. The Philippines is being robbed of its skills. And this is a problem, and that needs to change.
And the good news is that most likely the main investor in the Philippines will be China. And now Duterte with Xi Jinping, they have very good relations. So, and China doesn't really care what Rappler or any other anti-Duterte outlets say. So that's really, really good news. Malcolm, thank you so much for coming today. Please follow Malcolm on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. See you again very soon. Goodbye.